One more time. Good evening, Bristol. Woo! Welcome to Town Meeting 2025. I am so excited to see everybody here. How was the soup? That's what I hear. Good soup. Thank you, thank you. So I am Jennifer Wagner. I am your town moderator. I will be here to guide you in what you wish to accomplish tonight. I'm neutral, I got no dog in the fight, and if you haven't memorized Robert's Rules of Order, don't worry about it. Just tell me what it is you want to achieve, and I will try to help you shape what your question is, what it is you want to move, amend, to make this meeting happen and make it yours. All right, so a couple of housekeeping items. For those of you who may not have been here in Holly Hall before, there are emergency exits. There are 2 exits located in the back, the main entrance where you came in, and then another entrance, audience right, or exit. And then there's another exit up here in the front to your left, which goes downstairs and then out of the building. Please silence your cell phones for this evening so that we don't. Thank you for that example. Couldn't have timed that any better. All right, we always begin with an opportunity for any legislators who are here in the hall to give a brief legislative update. Thank you. So I believe Herb Olson is here. Herb, first before I have him approach, we have a microphone in the center. How this will work is if you wish to speak, you will approach the microphone. We have one here in the center on the ground floor. There's also a microphone up in the balcony. If you are a registered voter, you may speak. If you are not, you may not speak, and neither may you vote here tonight. We tried to screen people at the doors so that people who are not registered voters in the town are generally up in the balcony, and those who are registered voters are here on the floor. Now, only people who are residents of the town of Bristol and registered to vote may speak. There are people here tonight who it would benefit us to hear from who are not residents. Robert's Rules of Order allow us to suspend the rules if we wish to hear from them. So I'm going to name the people who are here tonight and ask if there are any objections. If there's no objections, we'll suspend the rules and allow them to speak. First, our legislator Herb Olson, our town clerk and town treasurer Sharon Lucia, Meredith McFarland, who is the director of our recreation department, and Eric Cota, who's our commissioner of roads. Does anyone object to allowing them to speak here tonight? Hearing no objection, they're permitted. Herb, if you'd like to approach the microphone.
Good people of Bristol, good to be here. A little closer, yeah, there we go. I'm one of your legislators over in Montpelier. A little bit further. There we go, that's better. I have a good guide here. Little brief update on what's going on in Montpelier, as I think they say sometimes. They are dealing with the issues that you folks told me were really important. Education, property taxes, right? Healthcare inflation, and housing in our rural communities. So those are the big issues. That's what I'm working on. The legislature and the governor are really trying hard to deal with things like education and property taxes. I'm a little worried about whether they're going to get to the finish line. You know, we're about, a couple of months into the session, and I think they still have to grapple with some of the real issues around, costs and how we're going to pay for it and who's going to pay and that kind of stuff. But they got a little time, so we'll try to keep them focused on those things. So the real issue, I think, is people are a little, they're sort of divided about, they have their pet projects they'd like to see continued. They'd like other things, off with their heads. Unfortunately, I think some of those small rural schools are in the target, which I would not like to see at all. I introduced a bill to try to have fair standards and a fair process before you close a school. But you know, they have things, thresholds like 400. That would include Bristol even, not just Starksboro and some of the other towns. So we'll see what we can do about that. Housing is a big issue, as we know. A lot of attention, I think, is focused on some of the larger population centers. I'm encouraged that the committees in the House, at least, are focusing on how to increase infrastructure in towns like Bristol, Starksboro, you know, some of the other rural towns, so that maybe they can give a little boost to housing in their communities as well. Healthcare is a huge issue. Representative Mari Cortez was not able to be here tonight. She's on the healthcare committee, so she's working hard at those issues. Or I like to say I've been around health policy since the 90s, and ever since then, people have said healthcare inflation is unsustainable and unaffordable. You know, so I hope people are finally getting the notion over in Montpelier that they really need to do something about that. It was 16% of the cost increase from the education fund last year. That all flows into our property tax. So I hope they pay attention to something like to those issues. I'm on a committee called the Commerce and Economic Development Committee. I've been trying to get a whole lot of information about how to programs, financial programs, to help towns like Bristol, towns like Starksboro, Lincoln, and Moncton. You revitalize some of their village center. Bristol's doing a great job. But revitalize things and hopefully have a little more housing, not just in the village center, but also outside the village center. So I hope they make some progress on that. He's my guy. He's my man. The one thing, sort of public service announcement kind of thing, is that the federal government has been issuing notices to federal workers that their jobs are being terminated, and it comes with a really kind of odd sort of notice saying it's performance related, and that might intimidate people who received the notice. You should know that that is adjudicated on a state level, so don't hesitate to file your claim if you're in that kind of situation, and it'll get processed that way. I promised I'd keep it short, so I think that's short. Any questions? Or you can get on with your business too. That's totally fair. Yes.
I think when we voted all those school budgets down a year ago, we were. You couldn't hear me?
What you got to do is go really close to it.
How about now? I think when we voted, Herb, the school budgets down, which is appropriately provoked the latest discussion, we were voting against high taxes. We weren't voting against foreclosing schools. So I'm asking, has there ever been a movement this year to try to fund schools some other way?
Yeah, so I think I've heard from a lot of constituents, why don't we move to an income-based type of tax system? I think that's what you're alluding to. You could do that, and I'm all for making the tax system more fair. My question is, whether you would just be shifting how you pay for it. If you don't deal with some of the underlying costs, you still live for the costs, and it's going to be expensive. The other thing is that I've been told, the governor isn't real fond of that proposal, and frankly, from what I can tell, the legislative leaders aren't real enthused about it too. So, just prospect-wise, that's where we're at. Yeah, I hear.
Thank you, Herb. Very much.
Have a good evening.
You too. People standing in the back, we still have a few seats up front. Feel free to filter down. I promise not to call on you because you're in the front row. The town has dedicated this year's town report to our former town manager, Valerie Caples. And yes, thank you, and applause for Valerie. I don't believe she's here tonight, but she served our community as a steadfast hand for 7 years, from 2017 to 2024. And this is to her dedication, integrity, and leadership that have had a lasting impact on our community. If you want to read more about it, you can see it on the very first page in your warning. Now ask the members of the Select Board to introduce themselves individually. I will start just to my immediate left.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Ian Albinson, and I'm a Select Board member, obviously. I'm also the interim town administrator.
My name's Joel Bouvier. I'm the chair of the board of the Select Board this year.
Do it again.
Thanks, Bob. My name's Joel Bouvier. I'm the chair of the board.
Peter Heffernan.
Michelle Pearlie.
My name's Jessica Tietz. And if I could, I would really like to thank a number of volunteers who tried to help get this great turnout today, and you're all here, which is super exciting. So I wanted to thank Jen Peterson, Sue Kavanagh, Porter Knight, Courtney Radford, Daniel Lyons and his students, the Masons, and Meredith and Aiden from the Rec Department. Thank you all.
On that note, can I see a show of hands? How many people is this your first town meeting in Bristol? And we cannot omit the very important Sharon Lucia, here to my right, your left. Sharon Lucia is our town clerk. I also want to introduce a few other people that I'm aware of who are here tonight. Chief of Police Bruce Nason, where are you? Stand up and wave, very back. Meredith McFarland, our Recreation Department Director, stand up and wave wherever you are. Eric Coda, our Commissioner of Roads, stand up and wave wherever you are. Up in the balcony, thank you. Chris Purley, wherever you are, stand up and wave. Waving, not standing. Doesn't follow directions, better. All right, if I've omitted anybody who works for the town who wants to be recognized, you can stand up. All right, moving on. Sharon is taking minutes tonight, which means she is writing down everything that you say, not verbatim. But that is why it is important whenever you speak, you need to first state your first and then your last name, because she has to record who said what. If I call on you by name, you don't need to repeat it, but please, when you do speak, state your name, Jennifer Wagner, and then go ahead. Next piece, I said there's a microphone in the middle. If anybody has any mobility issues, feel free to just raise your hand and ask for the microphone. Sean Kimball over here will be able to grab that mic and bring it to you at your seat. I want to make sure everybody has the opportunity to participate. So on the thanking, I want to thank the Masons. They have provided those delicious treats. I want to thank Sean Kimball over here from Neat TV. And Cal, also from Neat TV. We are also being broadcast on Zoom right now, so some of your fellow citizens are sitting at home, and don't feel jealous. You got soup. They didn't. No soup for you, right? And I want to welcome all of the old members of the community, our new members of the community. Very glad to have you here tonight. So people, well, the 60 of you who come to every single year town meeting, you can just fantasize about a warm beach somewhere while I briefly explain some of Robert's basic rules of order to everybody else. Okay, so, whoop, there goes the gavel. I got trifocals, so I'm going to do a little gymnastics with my book right here so that I can speak in the microphone and see what I've written. We've talked already about only registered voters can speak tonight. All right, Robert's Rules of Order. Ha! Well, I got to the blank page. It's the last page. I guess we're done. There we go. All right. There have been a series of articles warned by the town. You can find that in your booklets on page 6. If you have a paper copy, you can go to the town website and you can download the PDF. In my dreams, we'll have a giant screen behind me in the future that broadcasts all of the warnings so that you can see them. My job is I am responsible to read out loud the warning. After I have read it, I will be asking somebody to move that warning, and then I will be seeking somebody to second the motion to move the warning. After that, I am to reread the warning, and then we begin a discussion or debate on the warning. I'm going to take a moment right now because I think that takes a really long time for me to reread the warning, and some of these are really long. And I'm going to ask if there are no objections, I will dispense with, in other words, not read the warning a second time. You all heard it the first time. So unless I hear any objections, I'm going to read the warning once, it'll be moved, seconded, and then we will begin discussion without rereading. Article. Thank you very much for the correction. Good point of order. I take that point of order. When I say warning, I mean the article. I will read the article that has been warned. Any objections? Hearing no objections, that's what I will do. All right, an article can be amended multiple times, but we're only going to discuss one amendment at a time. You have to raise your hand and then I will recognize you to speak. Once you speak, I will recognize others before I return to you. Be patient. Robert's rule says that you can speak twice on a particular article, but we're going to use common sense here and do what makes sense. Rules say, all right, before you speak, approach the mic and state your first and last name. We decide by a voice vote. After we're done discussion, I will put the article to a vote. Those in favor will say aye, those opposed will say nay, and then I will call what I anticipate, what I think the ruling was. I'll pause, which will give anyone on the floor an opportunity to raise another method of voting. So voice vote. Aye and nay. If it seems clear, the ayes have it. But if you think it's not clear, then you can stand and ask for what's called a division of the House. You don't have to memorize those words, but that means a standing vote, where we have people in favor stand and then sit, and people who are opposed stand and then sit. You also have the right to ask for a paper ballot vote. If you do that, we need 7 members of the Assembly to ask for a paper ballot, and then we will suspend everything for the moment. Quick, grab some paper, pencils, and you'll all queue up and vote by paper ballot. All right. Debate on an article or an amendment can be ended if somebody calls the question. You can say end the debate, I want to end the debate, but it's called calling the question. And you have to be recognized by me, so you have to raise your hand and I call on you. If you think that we have talked something to death and let's just go ahead and vote on it, you call the question. Then we'll vote on that question as to whether we end debate. It requires a 2/3 majority in order to end the debate and then vote on the question. Address your comments to me, not to each other, in order to avoid the risk of impoliteness and saying things that you really don't want to have out there. All right, it helps avoid making comments personal. As I said, this is your meeting. I serve at your pleasure. And if you think I've made a procedural mistake, then shout out, point of order. And we'll flesh it out. And I will amend what I have done, or I will state my position, and then we'll have a vote as to whether I should be overruled. Again, I take nothing personally. Whatever is the will of this assembly is what we will do. There are certain state laws, however, you cannot violate, and I will point them out to you if you try to. All right, as I said, My role is just to help you accomplish your business here today. Raise your hands to ask a question, and if you don't understand what's happening, raise your hand and ask. I'm happy to explain. If you have questions, there's members here of the community who might have the answers. So it's always good to ask. And if you think something's wrong or you don't know how to proceed, ask. All right, at this moment, before I read the first article warned, I'm going to turn to our chair, Joel Bouvier, who's going to lead us in a Pledge of Allegiance.
If you'd all rise, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Be seated.
Thank you.
All right, I'm going to begin by reading the warning. The legal voters of the town of Bristol are hereby warned and notified to meet at Holly Hall in Bristol on Monday, March 3rd, 2025 at 6 p.m. This meeting will address all business to be discussed and voted on in person from the floor. After the meeting, it will be recessed until the next day, Tuesday, March 4th, 2025, for voting. Voting will take place by Australian ballot from 7 a.m., which is when the polls open, until 7 p.m. when the polls close. During this time, voters will elect officers and vote on specific articles. Our first article is to hear the reports of the town officers. Would anybody like to move this article? Please state your name first and last. Thank you. Does anybody second it? I second Tom Holly. Thank you very much. So at this point, if anyone has any questions, any comments, anything they'd like to discuss regarding the town reports, which are contained in this nice voluminous yellow packet, now is the time. Please approach the microphone.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
We need to know who you are.
Robert Bernstein. We have a large turnout, and we worked very hard to make that happen, and I'm grateful. I have a different view of why we have low turnout, however. It's not because of what we think. I think we have low turnout because the evolution of town meeting, which I've been attending for 50 years as a pretty active person, has tended to lessen the power of town meeting. And in that regard, I have a thought pertaining to our town meeting in hopes of having a more powerful town meeting, which I believe will then increase attendance and increase participation in our little democracy. So, for two purposes. One, to help the town in its specific businesses, and two, to increase the power of and attendance at town meeting, I'd like to offer an amendment to this article about the town reports, the officers' reports. And I actually have 3 amendments to offer, and I think you will have to take one at a time.
Yes.
The first amendment I'd like to offer to this article is one asking, quote, "Shall the select board be directed to include in each year's annual report a detailed reporting of the revolving loan fund, to include the amount of the loan, the rate of interest, the period of the loan, and the recipients of the loans, as well as the total amount outstanding in the fund and the amount not yet loaned." The revolving loan fund is on page 87, I think.
Mr. Bernstein, do you have additional copies of
I
that?
do. I'll have a
That's
copy to
lengthy.
pass on.
Could you bring
Thank
it
you.
up here now so
Well,
that Sharon
yes, I
can?
think it's a good idea.
Thank you.
I should point out that this is the first amendment I'd like to offer, and it's actually listed as the third here. I've changed the order.
Would you like to divide the question That would allow us to vote on each amendment separately as its own individual question. I haven't heard them all, but I'm thinking that might be clearer.
I don't think I understand what you've said.
Sure. If something is lengthy, sometimes it's easier for us to both comprehend it and vote on it if it is three separate questions rather
Yes.
than one long question or three
Yes,
amendments.
I think these are three separate amendments I'm going to offer.
All right, so let's.
So I have offered the first amendment. Let's see if we get a second for it.
All right, so we're going to divide this question, and we're going to discuss each amendment as its own thing. All right, so let's talk. I'm going to go ahead and read that one more time. And if you would help me, at the very bottom, circled? Okay. So on the floor right now, we are going to be seeking a second for the following. Mr. Bernstein has made the following proposal. Shall the Select Board be directed to include in each year's annual report a detailed reporting of the revolving loan fund, to include the amount of the loan, the rate of interest, the period of the loan, and the recipients of the loan, as well as the total amount outstanding and in the amount not yet loaned. Do I have a second for this? Thank you. So we have a second. Now we will discuss. Is there any discussion on this? Please approach the microphone.
Betsy Blair.
Thank you.
I lived in an area outside of Washington, D.C., and my family was all in politics. And they got a sunshine law where, like, everybody's, everything that they owned, you know, was public information, and it got printed in the newspaper and stuff. And that started making strange people creeping through the yard during the night and stuff like that, and it was kind of scary. And so they altered that a little to where it was open to the public at the county office building, and somebody could go, identify themselves, and read it, so that if there was some big conflict of interest, then it would show up in the paper. But you didn't just have to have all of your financial information distributed generally to the public. So I would suggest that if there is a concern that there might be hanky-panky, that it just be that the people like Robert could go to the town hall and see if there is anything questionable going on.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to say something or ask a question?
Yeah, hey, Josh Trudeau, Hardscrabble Road. This is just about transparency and showing where the money is going from a public fund. Hundreds of thousands of dollars, like that seems like a gimme, like a slam dunk here. Let's just vote on it, like.
Any other comments or thoughts? We've heard someone in favor, someone possibly opposed. Take the next person to come up, otherwise I'm going to start alternating.
Patty Heatherly, I'm wondering, is this information available if a person does come down to the town hall? Is it located somewhere? I mean, if somebody wanted to find out that they could.
Can someone on the select board answer that, or Sharon?
I mean, it's at the town offices. I don't know how current it is right now. I mean, my only concern is I think we'd have to check to see what we can and what we can't let out for privacy purposes or whatever. I mean, we could probably give the total amount that was borrowed, total amount now due, and probably the interest rate, but I'm not sure how much more of that we can do. I mean, we could tell you how much was left in there. I don't have that information right at the top of my head.
Yeah, there isn't any reason why we can't give you the balance of the account.
Right.
And what's owed.
Right.
But I just don't know how far, like Michelle says, I don't know how far we can go as far as names and everything.
Personal finances, that stuff cannot be.
Well, Betsy, before you ask again, I just want to make sure someone else has an opportunity, since you've spoken once and Mr. Bernstein's spoken once. Is there anybody else who would like to speak before I call on either of them? Since you have the mic, go ahead, Betsy. Oh, I'm sorry. Betsy, yield the floor.
Cindy Brisson here. My question is, well, a couple of fold here, but basically, how is the money broken up between rehab, affordable workforce housing, which I'm not 100% what workforce housing is, creating senior housing, and ideas concerning business development and recreational infrastructure? It seems like housing is a really big deal now. How is that money that you have, what's used as a significant kitty, which kind of sounds like a little oxymoron? But I'm curious to know, how is it broken up? You get so much money for one thing, so much money for something else.
And before that, is there a page you're referring to? You seem to be pointing
I'm
something.
looking at 87.
Thank you.
That was referred to by Bob. Thank you.
Are you asking how is it currently broken down, or how do we, like, whatever's left in the balance that's in there, how would we break that, do we break it down by?
Well, I don't know what is there, so I don't know how to ask that question. I'm just wondering, if you have a certain amount of money, does a quarter of it go to this, a quarter of it
No.
go to that, like that?
No.
You just go by whatever's happening.
People put in an application for the revolving loan fund, and the
Got it.
revolving loan fund committee reviews that application.
Great.
And then asks for either additional information or whatever to decide whether they're gonna give the money or not.
And that's the only question I can ask, right? One? Thank you.
Yeah. Before Betsy speaks, anyone else? Go ahead, Ms. Blair.
I would actually invite Robert to explain what would constitute hanky-panky with this fund.
Go ahead, Mr. Bernstein.
It's curious. I don't have any question about hanky-panky. It's about hundreds of thousands of dollars of public money that should report just like the rest of the public money. It's a simple oversight. By the way, I was on the revolving loan committee for many years, okay? And even as a revolving loan member, I thought we ought to do it. The reason I think we don't do it is because we think it is a question of privacy for the loanees, and they think that it might hinder business. But I don't see that as, for this public money, I don't think that's the prime question. We ought to report. Town reports, this ought to go in. I've said it before at this town meeting. I've just this time put it in as a proposal to discuss at a meeting, okay?
Would anybody else like to be heard on this? There's a hand, thank you. Go ahead and stand up and speak your name for the record.
Terry Ryan, call the question.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor to call the question, which ends debate. We are now just voting on ending the debate. It requires a 2/3 majority vote, so all of those in favor of ending the debate, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, say nay. The ayes appear to clearly have it. In which case, I will reread this article, and then we will vote. So, what we're voting on is, shall the Select Board be directed to include in each year's annual report a detailed reporting of the revolving loan fund, to include the amount of the loan, the rate of interest, the period of the loan, and the recipients of the loans, as well as the total amount outstanding and the amount not yet loaned. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say nay. Nay. It appears the ayes have it. The ayes have it. This motion, article, this motion shall be carried. Mr. Bernstein, I believe you have two others.
Yes, and wait till you hear these. Realizing that I want to help our town be as successful as it is, move forward, and to have town meetings with power. The second amendment I'm going to propose to this acceptance of the town report, the officers' reports, is this. Will the Select Board bring for the, excuse me, this is the second one on the list there, and it's the second one I'm reading. Will the Select Board bring for the warning for town meeting of March 2026 an article asking, shall the town move from the current administrator system of town government back to the town manager system of town government as previously used here?
Shall I reread that one before I ask for a second? Okay. Will the Select Board bring for the warning for town meeting of March 2026 an article asking the following? Shall the town move from the current administrator system of town government back to the town manager system of town government as previously here? Does anyone second this? All right, we have 1 second. That moves us on to debate. Is there any discussion, debate, or questions? I see, sorry, the person who moved it may speak first. So Mr. Sharp, if you just pause a moment, the right goes to the person who introduced the motion. So Mr. Bernstein, you can speak first.
We used to have this system. It was eliminated largely because the then village trustees who employed a village manager couldn't get along with the village manager, and to get rid of them, they had to get rid of the system, okay? The difference in the two systems is the important question. That was 30 years ago. The difference in the two systems is that the manager then becomes the main employer. I'm saying this a little clumsily. The manager manages the town workers. At present, the Select Board is managing the workers. This worked just fine to have the manager do it in the past. And it would free the Select Board to do things that I think they can't get to now as much as perhaps we would wish them to. So I think the main difference is with the manager system, the manager is in charge of the employees. At present, the Select Board with the administrator system is doing that work. It's my thought that the Select Board ought to be doing more policy and project work than managing employees, which can be handled pretty well by a town manager. The main difference, I believe, by the way, these are the duties of these are outlined in state statute. I think both. I know the manager is, the manager system. I hope I've outlined this successfully for you guys. And don't forget, I'm proposing that we change something in our town government, which I think will help us. And I'm also asking to bring this to a town meeting, which I think would ensure plenty of discussion and people attending the next meeting.
Any other discussion? Yes. Please state your name first.
Thank you, Dave Sharp in Bristol, up on Meehan Road. So I oppose this. I was on the Select Board when we had administrative, and we have run state town government quite well with 3 administrators over the period of time that Mr. Bernstein's referring to. I think it works much better than having a manager which then is a much more dictatorial arrangement where the only employee of the Select Board is the manager, and then the manager hires and fires staff. I think the current system with an administrator works far better.
Yes.
Taylor Welch, Taylor Welch Plant, the director of the Bristol Hub Teen Center. I can speak as a current employee that I don't feel, I personally like the way this feels. I think I predominantly connect with and check in with the town administrator as well as my coworkers. And while we report to the Select Board and do defer to them in terms of hiring and firing, I don't feel like I don't want one person to be the one that decides if I get hired and fired. There's comfort and there's security in that it would be a vote. And if the manager was one person that did not like what was happening, say, at the hub, that would be conflict. And so maybe I don't understand the difference, but at this point in time, I do feel like my role is predominantly connecting with the town administrator, and maybe the select board could share clarity on the difference between these two things.
I mean, I would say, Bob, that the description you gave is not how we, the description that you gave of the town manager versus administrator is not how we do things here. We generally, the select board for Bristol is responsible for hiring and firing, but in terms of daily management of the workforce, that's under the town administrator currently. Okay.
I guess I'm just trying to be clear in that. So that's a good point, and I'm still saying that as many other Vermont towns do, with managers, they seem to work fine that way, and I think it frees the select board to do other stuff. Okay? Frees the select board.
So I guess that in terms of freeing the select board, what are you seeing in this situation that the select board is unable to do because the town has an administrator versus a manager?
Yeah, no, I'm just guessing that you spend some time, perhaps at each meeting, working on town volunteers or employees that the administrator could do.
We generally don't. That was always handled by the town administrator or department heads, depending on the situation. I don't know.
I'm confused. I thought it was the select board that had the hiring and firing, as you said.
Well, we do, but there isn't a tremendous amount of hiring and firing. We've had a very good group of people, employees.
The argument would work
a lot for many, many years. There has been turnover in terms of treasurers and obviously town administrator right now.
I'm not questioning any decisions, and
Sure.
actually, one of your long-term employees was a person I hired as a town manager here, okay? So.
All right, Mr.
so-
Bernstein, there's some other people
so
who wish
we've
to
been clear
speak.
here.
If you can
Sorry.
wrap that up. Okay, no need to approach the mic to call the questions. So at this point, there's been a request to end the debate. We're going to vote on the request to end the debate. Those in favor of ending the debate, aye. Aye. Those in favor say nay. The ayes have it. Debate is closed. We are now going to, I will reread the proposed amendment, and then we will vote on the proposed amendment. The amendment is this. Hold on. Got to get a little light on the subject. All right. Will the select board bring for the warning of town meeting in March 2026 an article asking, shall the town move from the current administrator system of town government back to the town manager system of town government as previously here? Those in favor of placing this warning on the 2026 town meeting agenda, say aye. Those opposed say nay. Nay. The nays appear to have it. The nays have it. This motion is defeated. Mr. Bernstein, is there a third you wish to bring?
Yes, and I should say that I'm glad to have these discussions. Thank you very much. I hope it helps us, and that's what I intend to keep trying to do. The third to say is I would like to make an amendment to Article 1 of our town warning of this year to say, will the select board bring for the warning of town meeting 2026, a year from now, an article asking, quote, shall the funding for the police district of the town be altered so that the entire town pays for the funding of the town police district, unquote.
Do I have a second? Or actually, let me ask this. Would anyone like me to reread that before I ask for a second? Yes, okay, let me do that. So what's in front of you Again, let me get my light and my glasses coordinated. Mr. Bernstein is proposing that in March of 2026, town meeting of next year, there be a warned article that would say, shall the funding for the police district of the town be altered so that the entire town pays for the funding of the town police district? Anyone in favor of placing this warning on next year's article, please second. Or I don't, you have to be in, you don't have to be in favor, I take that back. Just if you would like to continue on to discussion, would someone offer a second? We have a second, so we'll move to discussion. Oh, I'm sorry, would you please state your name? Thank you very much. Is anybody, as the man who made the motion, Mr. Bernstein, you're entitled to speak first on it if you wish to say any more. All right, if anyone else would wish, good on.
Hey, Josh Trudeau again. So I just want to understand this. You're saying the people of the town are going to pay for the police district, which is effectively the people of the village. Because I get the state police right now. They're there in 8 minutes. They're pretty great. Love them. They're great. I don't want to pay for something I'm not getting a benefit from, and I don't see a benefit from me paying for the village's police work.
Thank you very much. And remember, this is not debating whether or not the town should pay for the village or the village should pay for the town. We're just questioning and debating right now whether or not that question should be discussed next year's meeting. Would anybody else like to speak? Speaker?
This is on our agenda to discuss. We didn't bring it to you this year because we weren't prepared with numbers to give you an accurate estimate of how we intended to do this. We've been working on this for years. It's been a very slow process. It's a very touchy subject for some people, but we do intend to tackle it next year, but we need the information so that when we come to the voters, we can answer your questions. To have that conversation right now, we don't have numbers on what we need for a budget. So we do intend to have this discussion and bring it to you. Yes, that is our plan. It was, like I said, it was our plan to do it this year, but we ran out of time.
Mr. Bernstein, would you wish to withdraw this motion?
On the contrary, I'd like to pass it because they say they're going to do it anyhow.
All right. Let me see if there's any further discussion. Anyone else wish to be heard? Well, anybody else, because you've spoken once. Hold on. Let's the gentleman in the back in the black please come forward since you haven't spoken yet on this topic.
Hi, my name is Fred Schroeder. I didn't expect to talk about this. This has been something that's been on my mind for a few years now. I am not in favor of townwide police. I live on Notch Road. I live outside the village. I live far away from the police department. And so hey, Bob, just let me talk here, and I'm going to give you like 20 seconds, okay? So I just want to say I don't even think we should even pursue this and put it on the ballot next year. We just don't need it. The state police do a great job where I live. You know, most of the policing needs to be happening inside the village. That's where the most people are concentrated, and that's where the most problems happen. So I'm fine up in Notch Road. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Would anybody like to speak in favor of including this question as a warning on next year's town meeting? Because we've heard two people opposed. Go ahead, you may take the microphone.
Hi, Susan Kavanaugh. I'm in favor of this exploration, if that is indeed what the motion is, to spend this time between now and a year from now exploring this topic. I live in what we call the village, but I think the state police do a great job, and I think our town police do a great job. I think the town police's work in the village benefits everyone, and therefore I am supportive of this exploration. I don't know how it will turn out a year from now, but I hope that the select board will do this work between now and then and bring it up in town meeting.
Thank you. Anybody else wish to be heard, opposed, or in favor? And shout and make some noise in case I don't see you. There's a lot of hands and you all blend in. All right, not hearing any further discussion, we're going to put this to a vote. I will read this. So what we're voting on is the following: adding to next year's warning an article that would state, and this is next year's warning for the voters to discuss at a town meeting in 2026, an article that would state the following. Shall the funding for the police district of the town be altered so that the entire town pays for the funding of the town police district? Those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say nay. Would anyone like to call for a division of the House and a standing vote? Yes, we have an individual, so are you calling for a division of the House? Yes, so we're going to do a standing vote. Could you please state your name who called for division of the House? Doug Corkins, thank you very much. This is what we're going to do. Get ready to stand. Those in favor are going to stand and then remain standing while my dutiful select board helps count. So, all those in favor, please stand. Would it help anyone to reread the question? Yes, I will reread. So this is what you're standing in favor of. Adding as a warned article for discussion at next year's 2026 town meeting the following. Shall the funding for the police district of the town be altered so that the entire town pays for the funding of the town police district? Those in favor of adding that article to be discussed at next year's town meeting and voted upon, stand and be counted.
Standing in the back. Is everybody standing in the back in favor?
That is a great point. Those who are already standing. Right.
You count the balcony.
Those of you in the balcony, you may stand only if you're a registered voter. Otherwise, please be seated. We got a lot of registered voters in the balcony. Those who are standing because they're standing anyways, raise your hand to indicate that you intend to be voting in favor. Thank you. Keep them up. Because short people, stand on your tiptoes. Thank you.
I got 85. Down here. Okay. What do you have up in the balcony?
When the select board has their counts, compare your numbers, and then we'll count the nays.
I had a total. That's what I had too. That's what I said, 110 total.
Okay. We count 110 in favor. Please be seated. Now, I'm going to read it again because that was a few minutes since we last heard this. Those who are opposed to adding a warning to the 2026 town meeting for the voters to discuss and vote on the following warning. Shall the funding for the police district of the town be altered so that the entire town pays for the funding of the town police district? Those opposed to warning and discussing and voting on that in 2026, please rise and be counted as a nay. And if you're standing in the back, just keep your hand down. If you did not, wait, put your hand up. If you're in the back and you want to be a nay. There you go. And keep them up.
I had 60 matter. What is your keeper? Okay, 67.
69 opposed. It appears that the ayes have it in support. Not hearing anything else, the ayes have it and the motion carries. Now, would anyone else like to discuss something that they read or saw in the town meetings? Mr. Ryan, I see you have your hand up.
Call it a point of order. Since the select board had said they planned to do this anyway next year, to the police district thing we just voted on, should that not have been adequate? That the select board in this public setting said they are going to do something, they're then obligated to do that, and we just wasted about 10 minutes talking about this amendment.
Maybe you should have introduced that 10 minutes ago.
I am asking it as a point of order.
Thank you.
That does, if the select board states an action at this meeting, is that binding?
The answer is no, it's not binding. Actually, I can rule about procedural. We would ask the town attorney for a legal opinion. Kevin Brown is a town attorney. Is he here tonight?
No, he's out of state.
Okay. So I'm not going to comment on anything legally as a procedure, but as a point of order, as long as an amendment proposed is germane to the topic, in this case, a review of the town reports, I'm going to rule it in order and allowed, and it was permitted to speak upon. Anything else anybody wishes to ask questions about in the town report or comment on before we move on to the next warned article? All right, not hearing. Oh, do we have, was there a hand I missed? Ms. Blair? Betsy Blair.
Well, you asked about any comments about this town report, and I would just say it was remarkably readable. It didn't just seem to throw a bunch of numbers and stuff on the page, but it was like, it was written as if it was written by an actual human, which is not done so much now. And,
Thank you,
and it was by a human and it was to a human. And I just want to say I really appreciated that.
Betsy, a lot of that goes to the gentleman to my right here, Ian, and the lady down at the end, Sharon. They took a lot of time and tried to make this more user-friendly and readable-friendly.
That's a good note to move on. Did anybody have any other discussion or comments? All right, hearing none, we're going to move on. Well, all those in favor of accepting the town reports, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, say nay. All right, the town reports are accepted. Article 2, to elect the following town officers by Australian ballot on Tuesday, March 4th, 2025, as required by law. One select board member for a 3-year term, one select board member for a 2-year term, one first constable for a 1-year term, one second constable for a 1-year term, one lister for a 3-year term, one lister for a 2-year term, one town moderator for a 1-year term, 3 library trustees, each for a 3-year term, one library trustee for a 1-year term, 2 library trustees for a 2-year term, 2 school board members, each for a 3-year term for Mount Abraham Union High School District, and 1 school board member for a 2-year term for Mount Abraham Unified School District. Do I have anybody to move Article 2? State your name. A second?
Second.
State your name. Mike Brown, thank you very much. We have waived me rereading this. At this point, I do offer the opportunity for anybody who is a candidate for one of these offices. You may stand up, wave hello, and introduce yourself. This is not a time for politicking or stating your platform, but you're welcome to introduce yourself or say a sentence about yourself. Is there anybody who's running for one of these offices who wishes to do that now? I'm going to start here in the front. Grab the microphone.
Hi, everybody. My name is Meredith Rossignol. I'm running for one of the 3-year MAUSD seats. I'm a former teacher, and I really hope you all vote for me. So, thanks.
Thank you. And I saw another hand over here. Yes.
I'm Elizabeth Betsy Almeter. I'm running as a write-in candidate for a one-year term on the library board.
Great, thank you. Anyone else? I saw a hand, yes?
Hi, I'm Vicki Coyle. I'm running for a 3-year term for the library board.
Thank you very much. Other hands? Ian?
I'm Ian. I'm running for a 3-year term for a select board member.
Anyone else wish to introduce themselves who's running for one of these elected offices? I see a hand way in the back, standing by the poll. Thank you. Anyone else? All right, here in the second row. Could you approach the microphone? A lot of people had the same question. Thank you.
Apparently, it's 2 years.
Would anyone else like to introduce themselves to the community? Who's running? All right. I'm not seeing anyone else. No discussion on this. So all those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. The ayes have it. Article 3. Will the voters authorize payment of real and personal property taxes for the fiscal year July 1st, 2025 to June 30th, 2026 as follows? Real property taxes will be due in 2 equal installments on November 15th, 2025 and April 15th, 2026. Taxes must be physically delivered to the town office by midnight on the due date, and late payments will incur interest of 0.75%. Y'all caught that. 0.75% per month, or part of a month for the first 3 months after the due date, and then 1.25% per month or part of a month starting after 3 months. Will anybody second this? Name? Thank you. I forgot, we haven't moved it. Who moved the motion? Robin Hewitt's moving the motion. Dave Sharp is seconding the motion. Any discussion? You may ask a question. Will you approach the microphone, or do you need the microphone brought to you? Oh, you're calling the question. I'm sorry, I missed the first part of it. So the question has been called. That stops the debate while we vote on the question called. So, your name? Thank you. Do you need Sycamore spelled? Oh, she's good. I would have had to ask the spelling. So those in favor of the article, we want me to read it again?
No.
Good, thank you. Those in favor of this article, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, say nay. It appears the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Article 3 is passed. Article 4, will the town set a limit on the penalty charged for late property tax payments to 4% of the amount owed, as allowed by Vermont law, Title 32, Vermont Statutes Annotated, Section 1674, subsection 3A. Will someone move this article? Lynn Dyke moves this article. Who seconds it? Betsy Blair seconds. Sorry, you people in the front row get my attention more quickly. You got to be loud in the back. Any discussion? Mr. Dave Sharp, please take the microphone.
So as read, I don't understand it. Is this a reinstatement of the 4% penalty on day 1 or hour 1 when it's late, or is this some sort of cumulative 4%? I don't understand the way it's written.
Thank you. Can anybody on the select board or anyone else, our town clerk and treasurer, answer that
Sharon would be the best answer.
Can you hear me? The 4% penalty is assessed after the second payment, which is in April, and it's assessed against what is left. So if you made partial payments, it's not against the whole amount that was originally due. It's just against what's owed, and it's a one-time penalty. It doesn't, it's just for after the second payment, the April payment, the final one.
Mr. Ryan is here with his hand up. I'll let him speak next.
So this is entirely separate from the interest of the previous article we just did?
Yeah.
Okay.
That was a yes. There's someone else coming up, Miss Patty Heather Lee.
Patty Heatherly, I'm wondering if a person does not have enough money to pay their taxes, if having more money to have to pay makes any sense at all. Does it work?
Does anyone want to address that question, or is there other further discussion? Mr. Beaker?
We also had this conversation as a board and felt that if we had talked about the option of leaving it off and felt that if we left it off, there's no incentive for anybody to pay their taxes on time if there's not a penalty for late payment.
Any other questions, discussion? Mr. Sharp, I see a hand. You've already spoken once, so this gentleman back, or lady back there may speak.
Hi, Mara Donnelly. I'm sorry, I don't understand what you just said because we just voted that there is a penalty if you pay late.
There's an interest if you pay late. The penalty is a one-time fee that happens if you don't make the second payment. The interest accrues monthly after the third month. And then after the, was it?
So that
sixth
is
month?
still, you do need to pay more for your property taxes. This feels really egregious, and I think these are not people who just forget to pay, which I did. These are people who can't pay, and so charging them more, I think we're already charging money for being late, and I think doubling down on that is really, shows a lack of compassion.
What's that?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, by statute, we're allowed 8%. We've reduced it to 8% or to 4%. I mean, the incentive for people to pay, if people don't pay, worst case scenario, nobody pays their taxes, nobody's gonna pay the interest on it. They may be, accrued it, but if people don't pay their taxes, what happens to the town? If nobody pays their taxes, we can't pay our town crew, we can't pay our employees, we can't fix our roads, we can't fix our infrastructure. So that's one of the biggest reasons to have it.
Okay, you may approach. Go ahead. State your name first.
Julie Almeida Clark. I'm in support of this, and I'm late on my taxes, and I really appreciate that there's a graduated system and some incentive. So it's a pretty, at risk of exposing myself, but my address is already in there, so. It's a pretty low interest payment per month. It's less than 1%, which is cheaper than I could get a loan anywhere else. So thank you all for helping me pay my taxes this year. And yes, I had an incentive, and now they are paid off because I didn't want to get that 4% payment. So I'm in support.
Thank you. Would someone else like to speak? Go ahead. First, Dave.
We're both Daves.
The Dave who hasn't been heard yet.
David Gusikoff from Bristol. My question is the 4% a change up or down from the previous amount, or is it the same?
It's been changed, it's been 4% for a few years, but we were at 8%, a one-time fee of 8% after the April due date.
All right, you can go ahead and approach.
My name is Elin Melchior. I'm curious if there is any sort of, I don't want to say, no, I don't mean forgiveness, but can somebody come and do a payment plan, or are there options?
Absolutely. I mean, payment plans can be worked out.
Yes, on the end, waving hand.
I'm Howard Jennings, and this is a matter of semantics, I'm sure, but the way it's phrased, it said, will the town set a limit on the penalty charge of 4%, which to me implies that it could be up to 4%, but maybe not 4%. So if you could clarify that.
Let me ask before you leave, Mr. Jennings, is there any language you would propose to amend this to make it more clear?
I would just say if you intend for it to be 4%, say we set a penalty in the amount of 4%. Could be.
It could be. Let me take a look over that for a moment. So it reads currently, will the town set a limit on the penalty charged for late property payments to 4%? Are you suggesting that perhaps the two be struck and say of 4%?
Yes.
No, I would
If
say
that's what you mean. If you mean 4%, then say it's a 4% penalty. If it could be 2% or 3%, up to 4% based on the specifics of the case, you know, that's a different story.
No,
All right.
I think that if you
I
just
don't
say,
really care, but I think it should be clear.
Remain at the microphone for 1 second while.
will the town set the penalty charge for late property tax payments to 4% of the amount owed? Take out a limit on.
Oh,
Yeah.
gotcha.
Yeah, last year's article says, will we limit the, town limit the amount of the penalty charged by the collector of taxes? So we shortened it up and we messed up.
Would it be improper to entertain a notion of a 2% penalty?
The question is, are you making a motion? If you make a motion, then we'll discuss your amendment to the current article.
Okay, I'll make a motion for a penalty of 2%.
All right, so you are amending the article. So now we are going to discuss the amendment. Yes, I'm getting that. Is there a second to this proposed amendment? I see a second here. Shout out your name. Thank you. All right, so I'm going to now open discussion. So what we are now discussing is the amendment, and the amendment only, that the town will set a limit on the penalty charge for late property tax payments to 2% of the amount owed. Since you made this proposal, you have the floor. You may speak first, Mr. Jennings, if you wish.
It's just a question of addressing the compassion comments that have been made. So that's it.
Would anyone else like to speak to the amendment? Yes?
Hi, Meredith Rossignol. I would love to hear from the select board what the implications of a 2% versus a 4% penalty would be.
I'm not sure we can give you the number. I mean, it depends on how many people don't pay their taxes. You know, it all goes on based on who doesn't pay their taxes and what that entails. So I don't know. I mean, if we actually had a delinquent delinquent tax collector who was voted in, they could charge up to 8%. I mean, the fact that it's in-house allows us to give that reduced 4%.
There's a gentleman waiting here to speak, and then after that, ma'am, you're next.
Good evening, Floyd Davison. The amendment as written still holds the word limit.
So
I would propose that
Okay.
the amendment say 2%, not a limit of 2%, because that gives us a room for negotiation, it would seem, as opposed to a stated number.
Well,
So,
this is fun. Thank you for proposing an amendment. I think it is.
Friendly adjustment to the amendment. How about
You're
that?
stretching the limits of amendment, and I think it is germane because we are still discussing the language. If anyone wants to make a point of order, but I'm going to allow it so that we're now not debating the amendment of 2%. Oh, no, forget it. It's become too complicated. We're going to continue debating the 2%, and then if you want to renew that as a motion to strike the word limit, you can do that. So at this, yeah, thank you.
Cannot, the proposer of the amendment to limit it to 2% could accept this as a friendly amendment and eliminate one round of voting? Is that
Yes, they
possible?
could. So, Mr. Jennings, does the person who seconded the amendment also accept that? All right, in that case, what we are now discussing, oh boy. Thank you for the vote of confidence out there. All right, so Article 4, will the town set a penalty, no, the penalty, will the town set the penalty charged for the late property tax payments to 2% of the amount owed as allowed by Vermont law? So we are now discussing, there's two changes within this amendment. We're striking the word set a limit, no, a limit on, and the question of 2%. Is there a second for this? Ann Wallace seconds. So that's what we're discussing. Any discussion? We have a gentleman here ready. Go ahead.
I have a question.
Step closer to the microphone, please.
Yeah, my name is Stephen Brown.
Thank you.
I have a question, and it's probably because it's late at night or something, and I'm just not making any sense of this. I want to pose a hypothetical for you by way of explanation. If I owe my taxes on November 15th and I don't pay them until December 20th, the previous paragraph says that I should be paying less than 1% interest. But now we're saying that's not true. We're going to pay 2%.
No.
Well, then can that be more clearly stated? Because originally it said set a limit on the upcharge,
No,
which by the previous amendment would say less than 1%.
No, the first part is an interest charge. The second, Article 4 is a penalty charge. There's an interest charge and a penalty charge. But the penalty charge only happens
what's
if
the
you don't
reason?
pay your second installment on time. That doesn't happen after the first installment. Your interest does.
No, that's not what it says. That's not what it says.
Yeah, it does.
I'm reading this Article 4, okay, and I know there's been some change to the verbiage, okay, I
Right.
get it. But I don't see anywhere in this amendment where it says it takes effect after the second.
No, Sharon just said that the penalty does not, it's not in there.
But it's not in there.
It's
so we
not in
can't-
there, but Sharon does not charge the penalty until, if you miss the second payment on April 15th.
Shouldn't
It's a
that be
one-time
written
charge.
here? I mean, we're not voting on the article as you actually intend to use it.
No.
Well, then why do we even have this? So if it's part of the state statute, then we already have it on the books. For those of us who don't know the state statutes, I think it could be a lot more clearly said.
So for those of you
I don't
who
expect
could
that
not
to be-
hear the conversation that was happening on the floor,
I'm sorry.
Mr. Bernstein was stating that he believes there's a state law that says that the town may not. Okay, there is a law, and it's cited in the article, if you want to look it up on your phones, that says that the penalty will be collected after the second installment is not paid.
I guess I would like to point out that I think that's kind of a convoluted and murky way of saying this.
We can make that more clear. We'll try to do that next year.
I think it needs to be, this is obviously a lot of money for people. Otherwise, they would have paid their taxes. So it needs to be clearly stated. Otherwise, we're voting on something that is open to interpretation.
Thank you.
Yep.
You're next.
I'm Lynn Dyke, and I think,
you know, the goal here, I think, for the town is not to make a lot of money off of this. I think they're hoping that what they get out of this would be zero. So people would pay their taxes and, you know, but there is an incentive, there is a penalty. And if you can't do it and you can't make another arrangement or whatever, you know, it just seems fair to me to do that. And with, hopefully, we don't get any money out of this.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to be heard? Yes, in the back, your hand up.
Yeah, Tom Pollock, and I'm just curious if there
Get to the microphone. You are loud, but please come to the mic.
Okay. Is there a mechanism that can help determine whether or not the people that are deficient in paying taxes actually have their money? And perhaps that mechanism could excuse any interest rates, the last part of the interest rates, the part twos. Is there a mechanism that you apply to determine whether or not these people are destitute or close to it?
Does anyone want to address that?
Tom, I guess you want to know if we know their finances?
Basically, yeah.
Well,
I'm
I
just
go back to
curious.
Betsy's earlier question in the meeting about, you know, is big government overstepping our ground, and say, well, we really want to know
I'm
your
not thinking
finances?
of big government overstepping ground. I'm thinking of, and a number of people have mentioned the concept of compassion in a situation. But if someone cannot pay their taxes, and someone on the select board can say, well, you know, these people are really down and out, and they're eating peanut butter for dinner. Can we help? So that was just a question. I'm not trying to make an amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir. Dave's jumped up in front of the person I've identified. You have a burning question. I'll call you next after this lady here. No, come on up.
Tom, again, I think that's really considerate. I also want to be compassionate, but I think as property owners, you can pick up the phone, you can walk into the town office, and they're very willing to come up with a payment plan, but it is on the responsibility of the property owner to say whether or not they can pay their taxes and come up with a plan, and the town is very compassionate about that. Again, in support of the article.
Can you say your name?
Julie Clark. Julie Clark.
Thank you. David Sharp.
Thank you. Yes, so I've been working on this issue for a number of years. There is absolutely no evidence that the penalty incentivizes people to pay on time. It is the...
Julie
yeah.
just said it was.
This is a moneymaker for the community, which is great. The interest that we just passed is substantial. I appreciate the select board's efforts to soften it by having it be applied to the second payment, not the first, as it has been in the past. And in an effort to reach a compromise that we can all agree on, I think the 2% number is something I can live with, even though I think any penalty is onerous.
Would anyone else like to be heard before we vote on the amendment? Got this gentleman, then you, then in the back.
Yeah, hey, Josh Trudeau again. How much of a concern is delinquent or unpaid taxes? I want to be clear, I'm paid up, but is it like such a huge thing where it's like we have to have, I mean, this feels like a boogeyman, honestly.
Look at
Like,
page 37. And 38. 37 and 38. The total amount is 200 and some odd thousand, 246,000 that we haven't done with taxes since 2018.
I'll review the page, but I'm with the others where I don't feel like charging them more is going to get us our money. I think we got to get creative or have compassion.
I had seen two hands. Go ahead.
Chris Purley. So when we look at the math, the current
delinquent taxes for last year was, what, about $100,000?
90, well, total or just last
Yeah,
year's?
just last year.
93.6.
So we're only talking a couple $1,000 difference between 2% and 4%. If you got a 5%, $5,000 tax bill, it's a $100 penalty. These aren't huge numbers. It is an incentive to actually do what you're asked to do. And that's where I stand with that.
Thank you. Next.
Hi, Rosemary Vahanik. Yeah, this connects to the last person that talked. I was wondering how the select board reached the number 4% coming down from 8%, and like why you chose that, and how much like you anticipate 2% would be different than 4%.
The 4% is what the body here has reduced it to in the past, so that's what we went with. We raised, when this all started, we started at 8 for 2 or 3 years, and every year it got reduced to 4. So we just put it in at 4 to save the time.
Save the discussion that we're having right now.
Didn't work. Okay, go ahead. Go, are you, call, all right, so question is called, which would effectively end debate. We are now voting on, are we going to end the debate? Those in favor of ending the debate and then voting on the question, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, say nay. All right, the ayes have it. We are only voting on the amendment to this article. Once we voted on that, we will go back and vote on the main article. So we are now voting whether to decrease 4% to 2%, so that the article would read, will the town set the penalty charged for late property tax payments to 2% of the amount owed as allowed by Vermont law? Those in favor of 2% say aye. Aye. Those opposed say nay.
Nay.
I think the nays have it. Okay, we've got a division of the House. We're doing a standing vote. Those who voted in favor of the amendment to 2%, please stand and be counted. Those who are already standing, raise your hands. Keep them. These are yeses.
No.
Okay.
We'll start from the back. Get your hands up.
We have 103 in favor. Please be seated. Those who are opposed to the amendment, lowering the penalty from 4% to 2%, now stand. This is those opposed. If you are already standing, raise your hand, and will the select board please count those with their hands raised first?
We got them. We got them. We got you in the back. Your hands up.
75 are opposed to the amendment. Therefore, the amendment passes 2%. Now we're going to vote on the original article unless there's more discussion. Is there any more discussion on the original article? And by the way, that amendment, I did only speak that it was 2%, but that also included striking the words "a limit on." So that also passed. Any more discussion before we vote on the article as amended? Not seeing any more discussion, we're now going to vote on Article 4 as amended. You are now voting, will the town set the penalty charged for late property tax payments to 4% of the amount owed as allowed by You guys are sharp. I was going to suggest you guys go get some sugar and cookies, but I'm the one who needs it. Will the town set the penalty charged for late property tax payments to 2% of the amount owed as allowed by Vermont law? Those in favor say aye. Those opposed say nay. Nay. It appears the ayes have it. The article passes as amended. Now, reminder, there is wonderful refreshments in the back. Feel free to get up and grab some and come back to your seat. I'm inclined to just keep rolling along. If somebody wants to move for a brief break, they can, but otherwise it's 7:30 and I'd love to keep going. Keep going, Article 5. Will the voters set the salaries that shall be paid to the members of the Select Board for the 2025-2026 year to be $1,000 plus $25 per meeting and $35 per meeting for the chair? Will someone move this article? Your name? Chris Bray, thank you. Second? Did you hear that? No, Mark. Thank you very much. We've got a motion and a second. Any discussion on this article? Not seeing any discussion, we'll go ahead and we will vote. Those in favor of Article 5, will the voters set the salary that shall be paid to the members of the Select Board for the 2025-2026 year to be $1,000 plus $25 per meeting and $35 per meeting for the chair? Those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, please say nay. It appears the ayes have it. Article 5 is passed. We're really rolling now. Article 6. Will the voters adopt the proposed 2025-2026 fiscal year general fund operating budget in the amount of $1,096,775.11, subject to modification by action on the subsequent articles, with $909,845.11 to be raised by taxes through a tax rate set by the Select Board on the 2025 grand list sufficient to raise $909,845.11. Now, the Select Board's gone and stuck an asterisk in here on me. Those of you who are following along in your book, the asterisk is not part of the warrant article, but they do appear to want you to know that the general operating fund budget includes capital appropriations for the Capital Building and Maintenance Fund, Capital Sidewalk Fund, Capital Technology Fund, the Cemetery Reserve Fund, the Conservation Reserve Fund, and the Reappraisal Fund. Will anybody move Article 6? Your name? Thank you. Second? Name? Thank you very much. Move.
I just had a question on most of these next articles. If you could explain why there's a difference for some budgets between the amount raised for the grand list versus the budget, and some there's not. Does that make sense?
You mean this article?
Yeah, well, this article, there is a difference. For the fire department, there is not a difference. I'm just trying to understand.
Well, this article has other grants and stuff we get, or funding, like could be
It's
our
a-
road.
It's essentially non-tax revenues come from three different departments. Under the general operating, which is like the clerk's office, the Public Works Department gets state aid highway. And Arts, Parks, and Recreation, a great deal of their budget comes from their programming.
Great, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Mr. Bernstein, please approach the microphone.
Thank you all for working so hard on putting your budgets together. I support them. But I want to note that point, I'm in favor of putting that in there. On the other hand, we used to, in another part, not the actual budget, we broke out the use of the capital funds in schedules, and I don't think we're doing that anymore. And I'd like to suggest we continue to do it with years and amounts as we have done. I don't think it's in here this year. Peter, you're shaking your head to tell me I'm wrong, which I may be.
You're correct. It's not, the capital funds are there just in numbers. It doesn't have the detail in terms of a multi-year list. Those are available. They were not all complete by the time this went to print. And so it was my decision to keep them all out. We wanted to get more accurate numbers, and as we sort of rebuilt the financial system and updated it for the town, I wanted to make sure those numbers were accurate, and so I chose not to put those in.
Are you also saying that the practice in the future will be to have them in?
Absolutely, and they have been in. They have been in for many years.
I know they
this
yes.
year, and if you want a copy, I can get them for you.
Thank you. I just, as a point of public information, we want to see it each year.
Absolutely.
And I might say, out of humor, that I believe it was me who put in the capital budgeting system into this town. So I have a historical interest.
Yes, yeah, they will absolutely come back.
Last point on this, which again is more a reporting point than any argue against this budget, and I'm for it, is that I see that we have a capital sidewalk fund in what we're calling the general operating fund. Shouldn't that be in public works rather than general fund?
We have it in general only because most of the time the Public Works Department does not have, it's separate from the Public Works Department. They
don't construct our sidewalks.
Yeah, they're not instigating it.
You're saying it's contracted out, so you believe.
Correct.
But it still should be underneath the other and then contracted from that budget to accurately reflect the physicality of it. That's just my point.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments, discussion or debate on this article? Yes, Mr. Ryan. There is a woman behind you who had raised her hand. Would you like to give her the floor before you call it? All right, Miss. State your name for a record.
Yes, Mara Donnelly. I just have a question about the increase in water fees on page 26. It's gone up 105% for the proposed budget, and I'm just curious as to why.
That was an Article 1 question, but I'm sure we can. No?
I'm sorry, it's in the general operating budget. I apologize. I thought that's what we were talking about. Page 26, under utilities and other. Oh, is this water? So I'm not sure what this is and why it's increased so much. I guess that's my question.
Oh, she's talking about.
This is for Holly Hall. Oh, thank you. Thank you. I'm glad I stand next to you. But I am also wondering why it's so high. Thanks.
I know part of that is Meredith and her great job of running this hall. It's almost full every weekend, water usage has gone up a little here. And the water utility company, we have changed our rates, and you users in the former village or the water district will see that reflection in your water rates. Not 105% by no means, but because we have some more bonds to pay off. Because I said because of the hall is being used a lot more. That's not all 105%, but we put in some for that. I mean, when you go up from $265 to you went up $800, that does look like a huge increase. But some of it was for more water usage here, but our new rates are kicking in this next, Chris, I think they already have kicked in this water period. So those are kicking in to pay for our new bond that's we just did Pine Street 2 years ago, and the new bond that we just passed last November.
So Mr. Ryan had called the question. Now we're going to vote on whether we're going to vote. So all those in favor of ending the debate, say aye. Aye. Those opposed to ending the debate, say nay. It appears the ayes have it. Debate is now closed. We're going to now vote on Article 6. Will the voters adopt the proposed 2025-2026 fiscal year general fund operating budget in the amount of $1,096,775.11, subject to modification by actions on subsequent articles, with $909,845.11 to be raised by taxes through a tax rate set by the Select Board on the 2025 grand list, sufficient to raise $909,845.11? Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say nay. The ayes seem to have it. The ayes have it. Article 6 is passed. Article 7, will the voters adopt the proposed 2025-2026 fiscal year Public Works Department operating budget in the amount of $1,292,108.24, with $1,177,108.24 to be raised by taxes through a tax rate set by the Select Board on the 2025 grand list, sufficient to raise $1,177,108.24. There's another asterisk. I'm going to read it for those who aren't following along. This is not part of the article, but the Select Board wants you to know that the Public Works budget includes capital appropriations for the Capital Highway Equipment Fund, Capital Paving Fund, and the Capital Road Fund. Will someone move Article 7, please? Bob Berenstein moves. Who seconds? Shout your name. Got it. Any discussion on Article 7? Yes.
David Gusikoff. I'm always curious on these money spending articles, what the percentage changes from the year before. And I'd love to just see that included whenever there's a money article like this, just as a matter of course. I think it would be helpful for us to know.
It's on page 28, 29.
Did you get that? It's on page 28 and 29.
I just want to make it clear that the reason we put the capital funds into each article was so that you got a true picture of what your departments were costing you. Before, if you wanted to know what the highway department was costing you, you had to go through and find which capital funds were going to that portion of the budget and add them to the actual cost of this article. So now they're all in one place, and it's explained in the narrative of where the money goes.
Thank you. Anybody else wish to be heard? Not seeing anyone, I'm going to go ahead and put this to a vote. Article 7, will the voters adopt the proposed 2025-2026 fiscal year Public Works Department operating budget in the amount of $1,292,108.24, with $1,177,108.24 to be raised by taxes through a tax rate set by the Select Board on the 2025 grand list, sufficient to raise that $1,177,108.24. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say nay. It appears the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Article 7 passes. Article 8, will the voters adopt the proposed 2025-2026 fiscal year Arts, Parks, and Recreation Department budget in the amount of $463,484.77, with $314,684.77 to be raised by taxes through a tax rate set by the Select Board on the 2025 grand list, sufficient to raise $314,684.77. Again, there's an asterisk. This is not part of the warned article, but the Select Board would like you to know that the Arts, Parks, and Recreation Department budget includes capital appropriations for the Capital Recreation Equipment and Facilities Fund. Will someone move Article 8? Chris Bray? Would you like to second it? Michelle Purley seconds. Any discussion on Article 8? Yes, come on up to the microphone.
Phoebe Barish. I don't have a discussion, I have a comment and an appreciation for the Parks and Recreation Department. I remember sitting here and approving the first Parks and Recreation Department probably 30 years ago when Jerry Utes was the part-time director. And from that point forth, the Parks and Recreation Department has provided for our youth an unbelievable array of opportunities for them. And I just really want to give a thanks to the people who make that happen.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to be heard?
I might also like to add, it's not only the youth that they're dealing with now, but they're dealing with us older folks too, so there's lots of opportunities to do stuff through the rec department.
Anyone else like to be heard? Not seeing anyone else, unless this gentleman's coming back from a drink break. All right. We're now going to vote on Article 8. Will the voters adopt the proposed 2025-2026 fiscal year Arts, Parks, and Recreation Department budget in the amount of $463,484.77, with $314,684.77 to be raised by taxes through a tax rate set by the Select Board on the 2025 grand list, sufficient to raise $314,684.77. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. The ayes have it. Article 8 is adopted and passed. Article 9. Will the voters adopt the proposed 2025-2026 fiscal year Fire Department budget in the amount of $501,093.41, with $501,093.41 to be raised by tax through the tax rate set by the Select Board on the 2025 grand list, sufficient to raise $501,093.41. Will someone move this article? In the back. Anyone second? Thank you very much. Any discussion? We're talking about the fire department budget. Does anyone want to be heard about the fire department budget? Yes.
Ann Wallace, while we were appreciating, I want to appreciate the fire department. They've had an incredibly stressful year, and I am so grateful that we have them in our community.
Thank you, Ann. And I'd like to, we were earlier when we were town employees, and I would like to recognize our chief and our deputy chief that were sitting in the balcony. They do a wonderful job for the pay they get. Stand up, gentlemen. Take a bow.
Stand up, please. Be appreciated. Would anyone else like to say anything about the fire department or about the budget for the fire department? Not seeing any hands raised, we'll go ahead and move this article to a vote. Article 9, will the voters adopt the proposed 2025-2026 fiscal year fire department budget in the amount of $501,093.41, with $501,093.41 to be raised by taxes through the tax rate set by the Select Board on the 2025 grand list, sufficient to raise $501,093.41. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. The ayes have it. Article 9 passes. Article 10, will the voters authorize the establishment of a new skate park project capital fund for the Recreation Department? Anybody want to move this article? Your name? Anyone want to second this? Thank you. Any discussion? Mr. Bernstein? Could anybody like to address that? Could you want to address that? He asked what this is about.
So a few years ago, when we were discussing ARPA, okay, so have you guys seen
Can
our
you-
skate park?
who are you? First tell-
Taylor Welch, Plant Director of the Hub Teen Center. Have you guys seen our skate park? Yes. Okay, cool. So you're aware that it's 25 years old, and it's asphalt and wood and steel and skate light and phenomenal and well-loved. And a few years ago, through ARPA, when we were deciding how to use the ARPA funds, the community identified the skate park as a priority for something that needed to be addressed and refurbished, because it is really well loved by all people of all ages in our community and our youth, and significantly used. So we were allocated $140,000 from the ARPA fund to rehab the skate park. Since then, we have had many different community meetings to make decisions about how to move forward. We've decided to go forward on a concrete park and are in the process of writing grants and continuing to fundraise, and we're in the middle of getting designs for the concrete park by a design company in Maine. So the capital fund is so that we can have the funds from what was ARPA funds and is now not ARPA funds, but have those funds and all grant funds that we're pulling in and donations be in a specific fund so that we can raise the large amount of money that we need to build a really beautiful concrete skate park. Yes.
Thank you. Any more discussions or questions about this article?
I was going to say part of it is just for better transparency. You can, because it's such a large project, it could potentially cost over $500,000. We felt establishing a reserve fund for something as large as that would be beneficial. It also allows the town to more easily track the money coming in and out of that account and how it's being used.
Thank you, Ian. Does that raise anything for anybody? Yep, I see a hand in the middle. We'll start there. Anyone else?
There's somebody in the back.
Yes. Can you approach the microphone? I hate to make you walk, but it gets hard to hear.
I'm Chuck Richardson. I live on Elm Street. I'm a relative newcomer to town. I've only lived here 32 years. I think it's important that we note that there's not tax dollars going into this fund. I've been around the hub. I hang around there quite a bit. I like a lot of the kids, and I'm real well aware of the repairs we've had to do the last few years. There's buckets and buckets of screws and rotten 2x4s. It's getting to the point where things are dangerous. Every year, I don't know if you know it or not, and I'll be quick, I know it's getting late, but we have a scooter competition every year there. We spend at least a day, if not 2 days, going over the skate park and tightening stuff up and replacing rotten wood and rusted off bolts and stuff, to the point where now we're starting to break through stuff. I'm not a big skateboard person, but I've tried a scooter over there, so I'm a little bit familiar with how some of that stuff works. And we need to do something. In the past, when we've needed to make repairs to stuff, sometimes we waited too long and we paid for it later. $500,000 is a hell of a lot of money, and I look at my tax bill every year and I say, holy crap, my house is worth that kind of money. I've seen the drawings that these guys are coming up with from Maine. This is not a stopgap measure. This is a long-term quality solution. The hub and the skate park are instrumental in giving the teens in this town a quality place to hang out. And we need to have it safe. This is a worthwhile investment, and if you decide to put a few bucks toward it. But I think again, we need to reiterate, this is not going to raise your tax bill. This is being raised by some very capable grant writers. Some businesses are kicking in some money, but we need to do something now. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, Betsy Blair.
Young people really got slammed by COVID, and I think that it's really wonderful to have something like this that they can be so proud of, and to know that this is a community that loves and respects them. And I'm just, even when it looked shabby, when my grandchildren would come through town, you know, even if they weren't going to use it, they just said, you know, this is a good town.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right, not seeing any other discussion, we will vote on Article 10. Will the voters authorize the establishment of a new skate park project capital fund for the Recreation Department? Those in favor shout out, yes!
Yes.
Those opposed say nay. All right, it passes. Article 11. Will the voters approve an appropriation for the Lawrence Memorial Library annual operating budget in the amount of $259,162, said sum to be raised by taxes? Will someone move Article 11, please? Over here. Your name? Did you get that? Spell your name.
Last name is Freund.
Thank you. I promise I won't make everybody do that. Still second motions. Second right here in front. Kathy Turner. Thank you. Okay. Any discussion on Article 11, the budget for the library? And we're only talking about budgets here today, everybody. Not seeing any hands. All right, I'm going to go ahead and read this for, one vote. So the question is, because you're not at the microphone, sorry, either. The question is, yeah, if you'd approach the microphone, I'd appreciate that, because what you have to say is valuable and everybody would like to hear it.
Hi, David King. Just curious if this number includes monies for the building itself, which is quite old and historic. It's beloved by many people, myself included. But the timbers, the exterior siding, the roof, the sidewalks, the electrical wiring, the plumbing, the interior woodwork, including the furniture on the inside, which is kind of beat up and shabby. Does that money cover all those costs?
It does not. So the library budget has small line items for grounds maintenance, building maintenance, things of that nature, but they're very small. It's a town-owned property, and the town does that work and does those repairs. So a project this year is to replace the front porch. That will be the town covering that. The library also did receive a ARPA-funded grant for over $500,000, and the town will be working with the library to complete that, hopefully over the next couple of years.
Anyone else? Not seeing anyone, I'm going to go ahead and read this for a vote. Article 11, will the voters approve an appropriation for the Lawrence Memorial Library annual operating budget in the amount of $259,162, said sum to be raised by taxes? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. The ayes have it. Article 11 passes and is adopted. Article 12, will the voters appropriate the following sums to support the Bristol-based organizations listed below, with said amounts level funded or lowered from the prior year pursuant to Title 24 Vermont Statutes Annotated Section 2691. Here are the following Bristol-based organizations. The Bristol Cemetery Association, $29,000. Bristol Corps, $10,000. Bristol Family Center, $4,000. Bristol Historical Society, $2,500. The Bristol Little League Baseball and Softball, $2,000. The Bristol Recreation Club, $15,000. The Bristol Town Band, $1,200. NEAT Northeast Addison Television, $3,500 for a total of $67,200. Will someone move Article 12? Shout out your name. Seconded. Name. Mike Brown seconded. Thank you. Any discussion on Article 12? Yes, Mr. King, approach the microphone.
David King again, just want to get my money's worth tonight. There's one cemetery that always draws my attention when I'm going in and out of town off of Hardscrabble. It's not very large. It looks old as the hills. The stones are overturned, many of them. Most of the year there are trees that are down on the stones themselves, and it looks forgotten. And it always makes me a little sad to think that it's been so neglected. Does anybody else know what I'm speaking of?
Yes.
And if so, do the monies that are listed here go towards the upkeep and maintenance of said cemetery?
That money is for the Cemetery Association that deals with Greenwood, the one at the bottom of Stony Hill. The cemetery you're talking about is the Varney Cemetery.
Right, okay.
And a year ago, we had the trees cut, and then the windstorm brought down a bunch more, so we went in and took care of everything that was damaged. We have a fence that Joel got donated from the Middlebury train project, and we intend to take the stumps out across the front and get the fence in. We do have a capital fund that we established for cemetery maintenance. I think we have 3 cemeteries that we currently have to take care of. There's that one, there's one on Briggs Hill, and there's one on Meehan Road that the town currently takes care of, and we have a capital fund for that.
Is there any attention that's being planned to the upkeep or restoration of the stones themselves, some which are quite old, back to the early 1800s?
We've had the discussion, and that's why we started the fund, and it's just a matter of getting enough money in there to be able to do something.
I just feel it's part of our heritage. It's part of the past history of this town. There's probably a lot of people here tonight that may have a family member buried there. It just shouldn't be forgotten.
know
I assure you, it's not forgotten.
it's not forgotten, and actually our former administrator, Valerie Caples, was on the, or still is on the Vermont Restoration Cemetery Association, and that was one of her projects that she's going to bring to them and see if we can fix some stones.
Any other discussion, questions about the Bristol-based organization appropriations? Not seeing any, I'm going to move this for vote. If it's all right with you, I'm going to omit reading all of the dollar amounts again and the organizations. If it's not, any objection to me reading the question for article but not reading all of the organizations and their dollar amounts, any objection? No. Hearing no objections. Here's the vote. Will the voters appropriate the following sums that you appeared when I read the warning for the Bristol-based organizations that were listed with said amounts level funded or lowered from the prior year? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. The ayes have it. Article 12 passes. Article 13, we're in the home stretch. We're on the last page. Will the voters appropriate $8,500 to the Bristol 4th of July Committee to organize the parade, fireworks, and events on the town green and recreation field? Who would like to move this article? Ann Wallace shouted her name, so I'm going to give it to her. Who said second over here? Thank you, Meredith. She gets the second. Any discussion on this article? Sure. The gentleman is calling the vote. Now, we don't even need to call the vote, okay? Because then we'd have to vote on calling the vote to end the debate. So not hearing any discussion, I am going to go ahead and put this to a vote. Will the voters appropriate $8,500 to the Bristol 4th of July Committee to organize the parade, fireworks, and events on the town green and recreational field? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. The ayes have it. Article 13 passes. On to Article 14. Will the voters appropriate $6,000 to the Have a Heart Food Shelf for providing food and essential items free of charge to any person living in the five-town area of Addison County? That's Bristol, Lincoln, Moncton, New Haven, and Starksboro. Will someone shout out their name and move this one? Oh, man, that didn't work. Catherine Wilson moves. I'm going to take Sarah Stott as a second. Is that okay? Great. All right. Any discussion on the Have a Heart Food Shelf appropriation? Not seeing any. I'm going to go ahead and put it to a vote. All right. Will the voters Oh, thank you. There's somebody. Please come on up and approach the microphone. Thank you.
Alice Leeds. I'm wondering, with a lot of loss of funding, and a lot of us are concerned about the migrant workers, many of whom are having trouble shopping, and the food shelf does help them, but I know for a fact that more of them are in need of help, and I'm wondering if maybe we should ask if we should raise the amount higher. And I'm wondering, I don't even, if anybody has thoughts about what that might be.
If you want to make a motion, you may suggest a dollar amount, and we can make it as an amendment.
I'm conferring with head of the food shelf now. Okay, I propose raising that to 10,000.
Does anyone second that amendment? Your name? Robert Sikkema seconds. All right, we are now discussing the amendment. Does anyone have any discussion about the amendment to $10,000 from $6,000? Yes, you're approaching the microphone. Go ahead.
Porter Knight. I wonder if the select board could talk to the impact on the community of raising from the floor an item on our community request. Given that the food shelf did ask us for this amount and to raise it from the floor, I think we should understand what that means to us.
Thank you. Does anyone on the select board wish to address that?
They're definitely allowed to do it, it's just that it ultimately comes to what the tax rate is and what your tax bill is gonna be and increases your taxes. I mean, ultimately, we're talking about people not being able to pay their taxes, we keep raising the stuff, and ultimately, that's what it does, it raises your tax rate, which then therefore raises your tax bill. I mean, I don't know what that is, I mean, it's $4,000 over 3,500 people or whatever it is, isn't much per 100, but it does increase the tax rate.
Hey, this is Josh Trudeau again. So if we're gonna raise the taxes and look for stuff like that, we could at least feed these people too. Like, we're gonna get bang for our buck out of feeding people. That's like one of the best things we can do. I've given to the Vermont Food Shelf before, like, what, like $1 pays for like 2.16 meals or something like that? Like, it's a worthy endeavor. Like, times are tough right now. Let's try to like dig deep and find some compassion. Let's say, hey, it costs us 30 or 40 more bucks a piece. I'll pay 40 or 50, I'll pay 60 if we can feed our people, all right? Like, let's be real about stuff like that.
Thank you. Is there anybody who would like to speak against?
Yeah,
Go
I'm
ahead.
just gonna say, it's fine to do that. We're not saying it's not okay to do that, but everybody could just make a donation to the food shelf as well.
Hi, Brenda Ellis, Bristol. So if I'm reading this right, we haven't increased that budget in the last, what, 3-4 years, given what inflation is for food, so.
Allison would probably know.
Yes,
Yeah, because I think we should.
I'm Allison Pouliot. I'm one of the volunteer coordinators for the food shelf, and the reason that we haven't raised the request is we have to get a petition for 3 years, and if we don't raise the amount, then we don't have to come back and get a petition signed every year. So that's why we've kept it flat at 6,000.
Thank you. Before we go on to discussion, I'm helping make sure that Ms. Lucia keeps a good record. The lady who suggested that, can you just shout out your name for us? Brenda Ellis. Thank you so much. Any other comments? Anybody would like to speak about the amendment? We're speaking about the amendment to 10,000. Not seeing any, we're going to vote on the amendment first. After we voted on the amendment, then we'll vote on the article as a whole. So we're voting on, will we amend the article as an assembly to appropriate $10,000 to the Have a Heart food shelf for providing food and essential items free of charge to any person living in the 5-town area? Those in favor of the amendment to make it $10,000, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. That was just the amendment. Now we've got to actually vote on the article as a whole. Will the voters appropriate $10,000 to the Have a Heart food shelf for providing food and essential items free of charge to any person living in the 5-town area? Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say nay. Article 14 passes as amended with $10,000.
So the change will be support by taxes. Currently, it's 8.12%. It now goes to 8.24%.
And you will have to petition for this next year? It won't?
It won't stay at 10.
Yeah. I'm just warning you now so that you know. Either that or you do the same thing from the floor next year. But we'd appreciate it if you petition for it.
Just petition for it so we can plan for it.
All right, thank you. Moving on. Article 15, will the voters appropriate $37,820 to the Bristol Rescue Squad to support emergency services? Will someone move this article? Chris Bray. And second, from this side of the room, Terry Ryan. All right, anybody want to discuss the appropriation to the Bristol Rescue Squad? Seeing, oh, yes. Great, grab to the microphone, say your name, and then ask your question.
Dave Rosen. My question is, as we are seeing some things that none of us would have ever expected from Washington, as a kind of a emergency health entity, would cuts in Medicaid reimbursement for ambulance services affect the rescue squad?
Absolutely.
Well, if that's the case, I'd like to make a motion to add another $10,000 to the rescue squad. We've got to have the rescue squad.
Is there a
Thank
second?
you.
Thank you. So we have a motion on the floor to amend $37,820 to $47,820. Is there a second for this amendment? Okay, we have a second. Any discussion on raising it from $37,820 to $47,820? Peter?
I'd just like to state that the rescue squad has gone to a per capita, so they're charging us based on our population, and they're doing the same for the other 4 towns that they cover. So I don't disagree that we need the coverage. I'm just letting you know that that's what they're asking everybody else for.
Mr. Moderator, I believe the operations manager or the president wants to speak. Liam? Of the
Yes,
Bristol
we'd love to
Rescue.
hear directly from, you may take precedence.
I'm sorry.
Thank you, appreciate it, Mr. Chair.
I'm Liam Knight. I'm the president of the board of directors for Bristol Rescue Squad. I'd just like to echo Peaker's point that we are moving to a per capita charge for all of the 5 towns that we serve, or the areas of those towns that we serve. And I think we've moved it up to $10 now per capita to reflect an increase in the cost of service that's come with it, almost doubling in our call volume over the last 7 years, and forcing us to move away from the volunteer model and hire some full-time staff to be able to provide that service. So that's both the reason that we're going to the per capita, which we're proud to say is still less than a third of what the state average is, and we're proud of that. But that $37,000 number comes straight from that per capita calculation. So while we're never going to say no to the offer of more money, it is in line with what both we're charging the other 5 towns and then other regional rescue squads are charging the municipalities that they serve as well.
Yes, if you could approach and if you could stand by to answer the question.
I think that's really clear and great. What do you
Can you state your name first
Oh,
before
I'm
you ask
sorry,
your
Ann
question?
Wallace.
Thank you.
What do you anticipate with potential cuts to Medicaid?
We don't know. A substantial portion of our income does come from Medicaid and Medicare, so we're concerned, but we have the same amount of information, so unfortunately.
Thank you. Next.
Hi, my name is Krista Diane. I'm a Bristol resident, and my only concern is these are talks about proposed budget cuts that haven't happened yet.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to be heard on the amendment, raising it by $10,000 from what was warned? Yes, Ms. Blair.
I would like to put an amendment to the amendment that if there are not any big cuts, that the taxes could be reduced for the second payment. Or something, that there could be a kickback of that amount, of the however many dollars it is for each tax
So
payer.
contingency.
Yeah, that it, well, let's see, the first payment isn't until next fall. So the probability is at that point that we would know whether or not the Medicare and Medicaid payments got reduced. And if they didn't, then that money wouldn't maybe be needed. I don't know.
It's a great thought and a complicated amendment.
I know. Somebody who understands this stuff better could improve it. Otherwise, I'll retract it.
I'm going to take that as retracted unless someone wishes to come up with a better statement. So we still have discussion on the increase of 10,000. Yes.
Patricia King. I would like to say that we can also give money to the rescue squad, donate money. I know we send them an annual check. I don't remember what the amount is anymore, but every year we send them money, and I think people are free to send them money, and I'm sure they would accept it.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Yes. I'm going to give you I could identify this gentleman first. Let's have him speak first.
My name is Mark Elbaum. It would seem to me if they're asking for 37, that's what we should give, and then if they need more, they're going to ask for more, and then we can give more. It seems like doing anything else is really putting the horse before the cart. So, I'm not saying they don't deserve it. I'm not saying we shouldn't give it. Thank you.
Would anyone like to speak in favor of the amendment? All right. This gentleman here, you can speak whether you're in favor or not.
This is Josh Trudeau again. Just to tag up on Mark, can we set aside the money into a fund and then we don't have to spend that fund unless there are cuts? And if there are cuts, okay, hey, we got the money there, we're squared away. But if it don't rain, then we don't have to spend the money?
Question for the select board, I think.
No, because this is for a specific provider. We can't hold it, so.
Any other discussion on amendment raising what's been warned by 10,000? Not seeing, oh, we got a couple. All right, you, sir?
Well, we don't know for sure if this will happen or not, but if it happens, we're, 9 months or so down the road in the next year or more, with the budget cut by a third possibly. There are definitely folks in the Congress in DC, in the majority party, who are hell-bent on seeing Medicare and Medicaid cut. So we don't know what's going to come down, but we can speculate. So.
Can I have your name, please?
Sorry, Howard Jennings.
Thank you, Mr. Jennings. And over here, Mr. Dave Rosen, thank you.
What crossed my head just now is that, I continue to support my idea. If the rescue squad finds at the end of the year they did not need that $10,000, they can next year ask us for $10,000 less because they got the money up front this year. One of the definitions of being conservative is to be careful. And I think this is being careful. Like I say, they can, if their coffers don't use it, so next year just have them ask us for less.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else wish to be heard on the amendment?
Can I call the question?
You may call the question. The question has been called. We are now going to vote on ending debate. Those who wish to end the debate and to vote on the amendment, say aye. Aye. Those who wish to continue the debate, say nay. The ayes have it. We're now going to vote on the amendment only. After we vote on the amendment, we'll vote on the main question. So we are currently voting on the following. Article 15, will the voters appropriate $47,820 to the Bristol Rescue Squad? That's the additional $10,000 above what is warned. Those in favor, say aye. Those opposed, say nay. Nay. The nays carry it. We're now going to return to Article 15 as originally warned. Any further discussion on that? Not seeing any further discussion, we're going to move to a vote. Will the voters appropriate $37,820 to the Bristol Rescue Squad to support emergency services? Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say nay. The ayes have it. Article 15 passes. Article 16, will the voters appropriate $2,000 to Addison County Restorative Justice Services? Anyone move this article? Sarah Stott moves. Will someone second? Elin Malkor seconded. Any discussion? Not seeing, oh, we got one hand, you got to wave it big. Thank you so much, Ms. Wallace.
Ann Wallace, I would just really love to hear from somebody who could represent the Restorative Justice Project, because I don't know very much about it.
Is there someone here who can speak about the Addison County Restorative Justice Project? So there's a report on page 110. I'm a juvenile public defender. I work a lot with the youth of our county, and Addison County Restorative Justice Services is a big service and help to the youth that I represent in court. They also assist adults who are in the criminal justice system. It's an alternative to going to court and going through the criminal or the juvenile delinquency process. So these individuals can be diverted into the restorative justice program. It gives an opportunity for victims to sit down and have a conversation with the perpetrator in some instances where that's appropriate, so that they can reach an understanding of each other and help the delinquent or the person who's created the criminal act understand the impact that they have had on the victim and on the wider community. There's also some very creative counseling, for example, various educational classes and projects and groups that people who are involved in the Justice Project are involved in. Sure. So, any other questions or discussion? Going to move it to a vote. Will the voters appropriate $2,000 to Addison County Restorative Justice Services? Those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say nay. The ayes carry it. Article 16 passes. Article 17, will the voters appropriate $1,000 to the Bristol Mentoring Program to support volunteer mentors from the Bristol community and Bristol children? Will someone move Article 17? Second? Thank you. Any discussion? Yes, Mr. Ryan.
More of a question about process here. Why isn't this as a Bristol program under Article 12 with the other Bristol programs?
Because it's their first year.
Is that the same for the Addison County Restorative, and that's why it's not an 18th?
So it's a combination of things. Some are because it's the first year that this organization has asked for money. Others are that you have to go through a 3-year process, and before it becomes part of the larger list, you need to be warned individually.
Any other questions, comments, or discussion? Over there, big waving hand. Thank you, everybody, for pointing that direction. It's dim in here. It's hard to see. Yeah, please wear orange next time.
Hi, I'm Mara Donnelly. I am the director, the coordinator of the mentor program in Bristol. It's one of 5 in our community, our 4 elementary schools, and our Mount Abe has one as well. And I just want to sort of acknowledge everybody in this room who's a mentor or who has been a mentor. Could you stand up? And if your family has had a mentee in the program, that would be the child. I don't know if anybody in this room, you stand up? Yeah, maybe they're all grandparents, but I don't. But I just wanted to thank all the mentors. These are folks who give, it sounds small, an hour a week to a child in our community, but it is amazingly impactful. And we have had mentor matches that have started in kindergarten, 1st grade, and have gone all the way to 12th grade. And those kids are definitely impacted, and our community is. So thank you, mentors. And if you want to be a mentor, find me, because we can always use more. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other discussion before a vote? Not seeing any. We'll now vote on Article 17. Will the voters appropriate $1,000 to the Bristol Mentoring Program to support volunteer mentors from the Bristol community and Bristol children? Those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say nay. The ayes have it. Article 17 passes. Article 18, will the voters appropriate the following sums in support of the organizations listed below, with said amounts level funded or lowered from the prior year pursuant to Title 24, Vermont Statutes Annotated, Section 2691. Here we go. Organizations. Addison Allies Network, $750. Addison County Home Health and Hospice, $4,700. The Addison County Parent-Child Center, $4,800. Addison County Readers Incorporated, $2,000. The Addison County River Watch Collaborative, $300. AgeWell, $2,700. Atria Collective, $3,500. The Counseling Service of Addison County, $3,875. Elderly Services, $2,200. Habitat for Humanity, $1,500. Homeward Bound, $1,000. Hope, which is helping overcome poverty's effects, $3,250. John W. Graham Housing and Services, $1,400. Open Door Clinic, $1,000. RSVP and Green Mountain Foster Grandparent Program, $750. Tri-Valley Transit, $11,306. Turning Point Center, $3,000. And Vermont Adult Learning, $1,650, for a total appropriation of $49,681. Will someone move Article 18, please? And Wallace, will someone second that, please? Deborah Dickerson, thank you. Any? Deborah Dickerson, right? Okay. All right, any discussion on this article? Not seeing any. Again, if there's no objection, I won't read the whole list. Any objections? Thank you. We're voting on Article 18. Will the voters appropriate the following sums in support of the organizations that I previously read to the amounts level funded or lowered from the prior year? Those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say nay. The ayes have it. Article 18 passes. All right, Article 19. This is our last article, and it's to transact any other non-binding business that may legally come before this meeting. So, I want to point out that everything that you have discussed and voted on is binding on the select board. They must follow your will. This portion of the meeting is also referred to as new business or other business. It can be a time for bringing up thoughts or ideas you want to share to the community, things that you want to bring to the attention of the select board so that they can be thinking about it over their next year. This is a time for you, but anything you raise, it's not binding. If we hold a vote on something you raise, if you make a motion and we vote on it, it doesn't bind the select board. So with that disclaimer, is there any new business? Oh, let me first move this appropriately. Is there a move, anybody move Article 19 to transact any other non-binding business? All right, did you catch that, Sharon?
There was 3 or 4 of them going, so I don't know who did what.
Luke Howard, you're going to be the mover. I'll take a second. Sorry to make this so painful. Chris Bray, I heard you, you're second. All right, discussion or anybody have anything that they would like? Ms. Andrews, you can approach the microphone. I saw your hand first. Please state your name when you get to the microphone.
Linda Andrews, Bristol. I'd like to move that we enter into the public record that Bristol support Ukraine and its people.
Is there a second? I heard Mr. Ryan loud and clear first. Terry Ryan seconded. Any discussion on the motion? Not hearing any discussion, I will go ahead and put it to vote. The motion is this, that we enter into the public record that Bristol supports Ukraine and its people. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, say nay. The ayes have carried it. It's unanimous. The town of Bristol will now publicly state. Thank you. Gentleman in the back with his hand raised, please approach.
Cecil Foster, and I'd like to face as much of the room as I can. First, I'd like to go on record saying thank you all for coming out tonight. Last year I was up here talking, and I mentioned that I think there were 64 people here last year, and it didn't seem like it was worth turning the heat on for 64 people. But through the efforts of many of the people, I know Meredith was involved in it, Porter Knight, Sue Kavanaugh, there's numerous people that promoted the fact that we should be, coming to this meeting tonight, and you responded. The Masons, which I'm a member of, we provided 3 times as many snacks as we had last year, and we ran out in spite of that.
Thank you.
I'd also like to go on record that I'm not a huge fan of paying taxes, okay? I've spent a lot of time with bookkeepers and accountants, making sure that I didn't pay any more than I had to. That having been said, and if you listen to me all the way to the end, there's a positive ending to this. I'd like to propose to the select board that they review the possibility of starting a local option 1% tax. Now, this has been around for plus or minus 25 years. When it first started, I remember, I think it was either Burlington or South Burlington. One of them did it, one of them didn't. Stowe did it, Wilmington, or Dover did it down there where Mount Snow is. And everybody was in an uproar because they, Burlington said, oh, they're not going to come to eat in Burlington, they're going to go to South Burlington or vice versa. They were all concerned about how the restaurant's going to lose money with that 1% tax. When was the last time anybody thought about not going to Middlebury for dinner, okay, because they have a 1% higher tax? A caterer, okay, many of you know I catered for a long time, and when I had to file my rooms and meals tax, there's now 30 towns in the state of Vermont that collect the 1% local option tax. There are 10 towns that are going to be voting tomorrow to have the 1% tax. I did a little research on this, and unfortunately I did it late summer, early fall, and I can't remember the most current records that I could find were either for 22 or 23, but if we'd had a local 1% tax in effect then, it would have generated $240,000 for the town of Bristol. $240,000. And out of that $240,000, it's probably 60% of that was from non-Bristol residents. It was from people coming from Lincoln, Ripton, Starksboro, New Haven. I said Ripton, I meant Moncton, as well as visitors, tourists coming from around the state that either stay here or buy things here. And what I'd like to propose is if the select board could, and I strongly recommend that we have this 1% local option tax with 80% of it going towards capital improvements, i.e., the upcoming water bonds that were coming. They haven't talked to us a lot about water bonds, but there's one of them on there today, and there's 2 more coming. So the water bill that you saw go up this year is going to go up even more in the ensuing years as we have more bonds. But if we can raise $250,000 a year by having the 1% option tax, our taxes will go up less overall, our property taxes, which is what we're all here for tonight, is worrying about our property taxes. The other 20% I'd like to recommend would go towards economic development, okay? And you can read that as to where we could maybe do something that attracted people to coming to town that would spend more money, again, to help out our local businesses and raise more money. So that's all I've got to say tonight. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you, Mr. Foster. Would anyone else like to be heard? Back there.
Hi, Mara Donnelly. I did want to say I thought about coming to a select board meeting for this, but I guess we could do it here. And when you talked about the food shelter and not upping your request for appropriation because you have to get a whole lot of signatures to do it. And once you get so the mentor program just got it this year. It's taken me 3 years to try to get enough signatures to get on this warning. So I would just like the select board to maybe review that process. I don't know where it came from. And then once you're on, you still have to get that. For 3 years, you have to get that same amount of signatures. So I don't know the history of it, but I'd love for the select board just to look into it and maybe think about it a little bit. Thanks.
Thank you.
Unfortunately, it's state statute. So we do not have the power to change that.
If there's a legislator here, though, you could ask them. Yes.
shelf. I just had a question about
Can you
that.
approach her? We can't hear you.
I'm sorry. I just had a question about what you just said, because we asked Lincoln for an appropriation. We had to get on their, we had to do a petition for 1 year, and then the second year, we just gave them a report, and we didn't have to go through the petition again. So did they have some sort of I don't know what it's called, but a variance or something that didn't, is there some way we can get out of that? Maybe, but just a question.
We can look into that. That seems unusual.
I can also touch base with the person in Lincoln and
Yeah.
ask how they did that.
Sure.
So,
Thank you. Would anybody else like to be heard?
It's quite possible that it only takes once to get on. I know the reason that we went with 3 years was to make sure we weren't getting people who were just hopping on, that the community was serious about supporting. And originally, it didn't matter how many years you went level funded, you weren't, you were required to get a petition. So we went to 3 years and figured if people level funded, we'd stop the pain of having to get signatures.
Thank you. Next speaker is up in the balcony. Please state your name. Couldn't hear you. It's got a microphone on in the balcony. Hold on. The microphone in the balcony is dead. You're going to have to hold on while Sean runs like an Olympic torch runner, carrying the microphone from the front up the stairs.
Jennifer, I'd like to speak while he's running that up there to the 1 cent.
You may.
Sales tax, option tax, local option tax. I'd like to speak to that 1%. For a gentleman who works at the bank, and I approve every month, 7 fuel bills and Green Mountain Power bills. I'd like to see a 1%, but not on everything. Rooms and meals and alcohol and food. Yeah, if I get, my wife and I can go to Snaps or Covers and spend $50, 50 cents more is not going to kill me. But to see when we all said about people, your light bill will go up a few cents or dollars for that 1 cent. Those essential things, I'm a little leery on approving those things as a board member. You can.
It is. It's
You
only.
can have it.
Yes. Only
Well, you
rooms
can
and
have it.
meals.
Middlebury Brandon has one, and it's on our electrical bills. And Middlebury has it, and Heinsberg doesn't, or Heinsberg does, Vigence doesn't, Bristol doesn't. So, and I think about the people who are struggling with the inefficient homes, and they're trying to weatherize them up, and they've got to go buy plastic and stuff to put over their windows with the heat gun that we used to do when we lived in apartments. And they go to the hardware store and they got to spend an extra $1 for that stuff. Yeah, that's not a lot to us, but some of them and they say, well, I'll get fuel assistance instead because I can get that.
Thank you.
It's definitely on our list. It wasn't ready to be put on for this town meeting, and we have the option to pick and choose how we would like to use it in the community. But I think we wanted to present more information to the residents and the business owners in Bristol before putting it for a vote.
Thank you. Speaker in the balcony, state your name.
Karen Lassner.
Go ahead.
This doesn't seem very relevant now, but talking about signing and petitions, I volunteer at Women's Safe, Atria, and every town is different for us, whether we have, how many signatures and how many years and all that. So I don't know. I mean, you guys are definitely 3 years, but then if we want to raise it, it has to be done, again, every year and so many signatures. But every town for us is different in Addison County. So that was all.
Thank you for the comment. Would anyone else like to be heard before we adjourn? Yes, you've had your hand up a while.
Hi, Nick Dooley from Lower Notch Road. I'd like to propose that Bristol adopts a pledge that's put forth by the American Friends Service Committee. It's a Quaker organization. It's called the Apartheid-Free Community Pledge, and it goes like this. We affirm our commitment to freedom, justice, and equality for the Palestinian people and all people. We oppose all forms of racism, bigotry, discrimination, and oppression, and we declare ourselves an apartheid-free community. And to that end, we pledge to join others in working to end all support to Israel's apartheid regime, settler colonialism, and military occupation.
So we have a motion to have a Bristol adopt this pledge. Is there a second? And your name? Thank you, Richard Butts. Any discussion? Wave your hands big because I can't see in this dim light that well. All right, Mr. Bray.
I appreciate anyone ever bringing any kind of motion forward because it lets us have a community discussion. Chris Bray, and I think although I have great interest in us as a community expressing goodwill, for instance, we did this with a motion to support Ukraine and Ukrainians. The complexity of the situation in the Middle East, in particular, the Palestinian and Israeli situation goes back many, many generations, centuries, and I think it is such a complicated issue that even if our sympathies are to support, I'd say, I'm guessing most people would like to see homelands safe and secure for both parties. I think this motion brings us into a territory where we will be too far out over our skis, making a motion with consequences that are not fully spelled out by the motion. And I would say, as individuals, I would encourage people to follow their hearts and minds on this issue. But I think it's a very tricky position to put the town in, to be speaking on something as complex and difficult as the Israeli-Palestinian situation.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to be heard? Yes, Steik.
Yes, I just want to say, I think I agree with Chris. I oppose this, and I do not want to be part of saying, I am a citizen of Bristol or whatever, and I do not want my name on that. So I'm opposed to doing that.
Thank you. Would someone like to speak in favor now? We've heard two people opposed. Thank you. Come on down.
My name is Sarah Stott, and I would think that when we all vote on this motion, we are saying what we feel about this particular issue. So I would, for instance, support it, and those who don't support it won't. And so you'll see 40-60, 50-50, 20-80, then we'll know. It isn't saying that the people of Bristol feel this way. It feels, I, as an individual, am supporting it or not supporting it. It's not speaking on behalf of the town. It's just the people in this room.
It is a motion for a pledge by the town. So we are at, the motion was that the town adopt this pledge.
Okay.
So we are, as voters, speaking for the town if the town approves this with an aye vote.
Okay, I understand. It's a good concept.
Thank you. Yes, you may stand up and take the microphone.
My name is Mark Elbaum. I'm a resident of Bristol. I just feel whatever your views are your views, and I support them.
If you could please direct to me.
Whatever my views are my views. But even if 77% vote for your views, they still don't have the right to speak for my views. This is not a tax law. You know, you can't just say, we support this, because
if you could again look, excuse me, Mr. Elbow.
There's no we.
It's always, please look at me, do not look at the person who made it or someone else. We just try to keep it that way, to keep this as a civil conversation.
Everyone has their own view, and you can't pass a flat statement like that.
Okay, thank you. Would someone else like to be heard?
You got somebody over here.
This balcony, hands raised before the question was called because I wasn't sure. Can someone on the side? All right, so balcony, go ahead.
My name is Peg Kamens, and I would support the motion only if you also included something about the return of the hostages, because I think that's also an important thing.
Are you making an amendment or asking the original person to make a friendly amendment to their own motion?
I'm asking for a friendly amendment. You know, it's a terrible thing what happened. These people are really suffering right now as well. Both sides are suffering, and I just hope you can see both sides.
So the gentleman who made the original motion for the pledge, you have been requested by a member of the assembly to make a friendly amendment to your motion. And that motion is that it also include a statement about return of hostages. Are you willing to make that amendment, or do you decline?
I'm happy to make an addendum, I guess, rather than amending any of the text I read, but if we want to add a statement that the town also supports the return of all hostages in the conflict, does that appease?
The person who originally seconded that, do you approve of the friendly amendment? Okay. Go ahead, you sir, with your hand in the front row.
Ian Johnson.
Can you approach the microphone, pretty please?
I would like to make the point that this is outside of the scope of town business.
So a point of order has been made. This time is for discussing things that would be in town business. Is your comment related to this question as to whether or not this is within the scope of town business? So those of you who can't hear the commenter said, well, we supported Ukraine. This is in the same vein. As a moderator, I am here to do your will. It is a time for town business, but if the assembly wants to discuss issues of national importance, I'm not going to stand in your way. So I will allow this. If anybody disagrees with my ruling, you can raise the objection, and then the assembly can rule on my ruling, but I'm going to allow it.
Can I call the question?
You may call the question. All right, I don't have the text in front of me, and it's the moderator's job to reread the text of what we're voting on, so I'm going to call the gentleman who made the motion to go ahead and reread.
We affirm our commitment to freedom, justice, and equality for the Palestinian people and all people. We oppose all forms of racism, bigotry, discrimination, and oppression, and we declare ourselves an apartheid-free community. And to that end, we pledge to join others in working to end all support to Israel's apartheid regime, settler colonialism, and military occupation. The town also, how did I phrase this? The town also supports the return of all hostages in the conflict.
Thank you. Those in favor of adopting, the town adopting this pledge, vote aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay.
Nay.
I believe the nays have it. At this point, if anyone wanted to request a division of House or standing vote, they may. Otherwise, I'm going to rule. All right, we have a division of the House. So now, those in favor of adopting this pledge, please stand and be counted. Those who are already standing, raise your hands. And the Select Board promises to count you first. And you do have a third choice, you can't abstain.
Forty-four.
44 in favor, please be seated. Those who oppose the town adopting this, please stand and be counted. Those who are already standing, raise your hand. The Select Board will count those with hands raised first. Thank you.
Sixty-five.
65 opposed. This motion fails, but I do think that everyone in this room does care about this issue, and this does not mean that we all oppose it. Anybody else have any issues? Thank you. Anyone else have anything they want? Yes, please approach the microphone.
Hi, Gary Smith. I'm not sure the best way to go about this. I know there are a lot of us interested in green burials without having to go to the Vermont Forest Cemetery an hour and a half away or something like that. And I know the state makes it very difficult to establish a green cemetery. So I'm just wondering if there's a way the select board can help us find a way to negotiate this. Thank you.
Anyone on the select board want to address it?
We've never been approached to, even to just talk about it, I'm sorry to say.
All right, thank you. Ms. Wallace, come on, approach the microphone.
Ann Wallace, I just wanted to let people know, I have been researching this and looking at it, and I'm in touch with the cemetery committee, is that what it's called? Association, and also have worked in other venues and been in touch with Michelle Acevati, who is the founder. So I really want to talk to that gentleman, and we haven't approached the select board yet because we haven't gotten there yet, but it's definitely on my mind and numbers of other people's minds.
Thank you so much for sharing that information. Yes, please approach the microphone and state your name.
Jim Vianock from Mountain Street. I just wanted to take a moment on behalf, I think, of a lot of people in Bristol to thank the off-duty police officer who was walking his dog that night that called it in, the EMTs and the fire that showed up and the police that showed up when Steve Leopold passed. We were there, my wife and I, supporting Emily, the daughter, and it was a heck of a thing. And we saw the police chief give her the word. That's not a job I'd wish on anybody, but he did a great, great job. And I think they all deserve a round of applause.
Thank you. Someone in the back with the microphone in the balcony. Thank you.
Yes, hi, Carol Weston. Just wanted to thank the community for supporting the Bristol Band.
Would anyone else like to be heard before we adjourn? Yes, down here. All right, we have a motion to adjourn. Do we have a second? Everybody second. Can you write everybody? All right. All in favor, say yes. Yes. Opposed, say no, I want to stay.
If I could ask
ayes
everyone
pass.
to pick up their chairs, if you could grab your chair and help us pick up, because we got to set up for voting tomorrow morning. Make our job a lot easier. Thank you.